At least 44 Palestinians have been killed and more than 80 wounded in Israeli strike on northern Gaza's Jabalia and Maghazi refugee camps. Israeli forces target Al-Orda and Kamal Adwan hospitals in northern Gaza. Meanwhile, Hamas remains defiant after the killing of Yahya Sinwar, saying Israeli captives will not be released unless the aggression on Gaza stops. Israeli forces completely withdraw and Palestinian prisoners held in Israel are freed. In Gaza, at least 42,519 people have been killed and 99,637 wounded in Israeli attacks since October 7, 2023. And Israel's government has said a drone was launched toward the Prime Minister's house with no casualties. So sirens waved Saturday morning in Israel, warning of incoming fire from Lebanon, with a drone launched toward Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's house in Caesarea. Neither he nor his wife were home and there were no casualties, said a spokesperson in a statement. Hezbollah had on Friday said that it planned to launch a new phase of fighting by sending more guided missiles and exploding drones into Israel. A standoff is also ensuing between Israel and Hamas, which it's fighting in Gaza, with both signaling resistance to ending war after the death of Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar this week.
Voted as the best TV station of the year. TVC News breaks into the core of every event as they happen. Following all nationwide big and impactful stories. We tell the news from every perspective, covering every human angle. I am Veronica, bringing you the news you would want to watch.
There is always more to a story than the screaming headline. The part of a story that is not told casts a shadow. It's like the part of an object that is not reached by light. On TVC News, I'm able to explore the many angles there are to a story, talking to stakeholders, asking the difficult questions, and digging for facts. I believe the viewers are able to make a better decision if they're well informed and understand not just a part, but the complete story. TVC News. First, with breaking news.
You're watching TVC News. Ukrainian President Zelensky on Thursday said his government has intelligence information that 10,000 troops from North Korea are being prepared to join Russian forces fighting against his country, warning that a third nation wading into hostilities would turn the conflict into a world war. President Zelensky did not go into detail about the claim that came a day after U.S. Deputy Secretary of State Kurt Campbell said that Washington and its allies are alarmed by North Korea's military support for Russia's war in Ukraine, but couldn't confirm Ukrainian claims that soldiers were sent to fight for Moscow. The Ukrainian leader's comments raised the stakes for his Western allies as he met in Brussels with European Union leaders and the NATO defense ministers to discuss his victory plan to end the country's devastating war with Russia. Major points of the plan include an invitation for Ukraine to join NATO and permission to use Western-supplied longer-range missiles to strike military targets deep inside Russia, steps that have been met with reluctance by Kyiv allies so far.
United States all the time they have considered that NATO has the potential of dragging United States into war. And so there are certain red lines even by inviting Ukraine to NATO. But in my view, legally no, and this is not so. And if you really want Ukraine to be part of NATO, and if you're not only mentioning this in words, that Ukraine is very important for the security of the European continent, then it should coincide with the actions. So words and actions should go together. And that is why invitation to NATO is not at all crossing any red lines. And crossing red lines with whom? With a murderer? So invitation is a preventive step to show that it's not Putin who is changing the world. So the world is changing, is actually forming the world and its values.
And joining us for more on this is Global Affairs Analyst Collins Nweke. Good afternoon.
Very good afternoon to you, Abimbola. How are you doing?
Very well, thank you. Now, the news of North Korea sending troops to Russia seems to be gaining traction. How do you think this will play out in the war?
Well, if it is confirmed to be true, you can surmise that Russia is essentially doing all that is desirable in his books to ensure that it wins the war. However, North Korea, by that action, if proven to be correct, will only manage to alienate itself more from the rest of the world. I mean, it's not as if they care. But there is probably, some truth in the claim that that is happening, and I'm not sure that it will, surprise anyone, because the comparison to be made here, I mean, those leaning to the side of Russia, is the fact that the United States and the Western allies, the NATO countries, and all of that have been supporting Ukraine with, indirectly, not with troops, because they have ruled that out, but certainly with logistics, with ammunition, and so on and so forth. So it is part of the mess that continues to unfold.
Ukrainian president has warned that a third nation wading into the hostilities would turn the conflict into a world war. Though he has not really gone into the details of this claim. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, yeah, I think there is there are some logic in the worry that if a third country is involved, yes. It then begins to lean more and more into. But you see, it was not for nothing that the United States and Europe have, taken that strategic decision that they are not going to send boots on the grounds in Ukraine. It is precisely for that reason. But I do not think that 10,000 troops sent from North Korea to Ukraine is going to, degenerate into World War III. I think the world is capable of managing it, but of course, it is not a walk on the park. It gives cause for serious worries.
Now, Zelensky presented a victory plan to EU. Do you think this is going to bring a close to this long-drawn war?
I think the philosophy behind the victory plan that Zelensky of Ukraine presented to the EU at the just concluded summit is essentially, yes, it's going to get worse before it gets better. The reason one could say that that is the philosophy behind that is the fact that, he is asking for all sorts of ammunition, all sorts of support that could enable Ukraine to launch a missile attack, right into the deep into the heart of Russia. It's also asking for a number of help that will actually escalate, not de-escalate the war. Now, the sense in that, according to the Ukrainian books, is that Russia isn't ready to come to the negotiating table. And the only way that they can get Russia to come to the negotiating table is to beat them to submission. So which means that the more incursion into Russia, the more Russia is pressed to the limit, the more likely they are to, actually want to negotiate. That is the, logic behind that. Now, the extent to which, that is going to play out as envisaged remains wait and see. We are already worrying about the fact that, 10,000 troops is going to be sent from North Korea to, Ukraine or Russia, we will also see other forms of response leading to escalation from the side of Russia. But ultimately, I believe the victory plan has received overwhelming support. There are a number of, dissenting voices, for instance, from Hungary, and the rest of them. I believe also Slovakia is becoming more and more pro-Russia. But I think there are enough voices singing from the same hymn book that, will render the support that Ukraine needs to enable it, strengthen itself and, prosecute this war, in a more coordinated manner.
Now, Zelensky also pushed for entry into NATO. Is Ukraine's inclusion feasible in the nearest future?
If you sample opinions within the European leaders, there appear to be some appetites, perhaps sufficient appetite to welcome Ukraine into NATO. Now, they are looking at it more from a long-term strategic position, which is that it is not enough to win the war. You also have to be sure that you are well prepared to prevent, a reoccurrence of what happened more than, 2 years ago by Russia. And they believe that the only life assurance that NATO, working together with EU and, the United States, the only life assurance that they can give to Ukraine is to bring them into the NATO fold. That way, they are insulated from a further Russian attack. So yes, this is something that they are giving very, very serious thought. As a matter of fact, the Secretary General of NATO, Mark Rutte, has actually, Mark Rutte, has actually confirmed that certainly, and I'm quoting him now, certainly Ukraine will join NATO, but whether that is going to happen immediately in terms of timeline, he didn't speak about that, but certainly this is going to happen.
All right, thanks indeed for your time with us. Global Affairs Analyst Collins Wiki sharing his thoughts with us on the Russia-Ukraine war.
Thank you for having me, Bimbola.
Liam Payne's former One Direction bandmates have said they are devastated over the singer's sudden death, aged 31, after he fell from a hotel balcony in